Thanks for listening to A Halloween Spooktacular, a radio drama.
If you enjoyed listening to this and other spooky tales, consider donating. Details in the description below. And now on with The Red Room.
Featuring JULE NELSON-DUAC, Samuel Richie, DERRICK UTLEY, and Dan Wilson.
This is no ordinary ghost. The young Duke died 65 years ago this very night.
In that room.
In that room.
And don't forget a poor countess afore that. That were near 100 years ago.
Yes, but she didn't die.
She did too.
3 years later.
Because of that room, after a cruel jest had been played upon her by her callous husband.
By her callous husband.
We all know that lady ghosts are far worse than other ghosts.
Worse than other ghosts, yes. But I know what's lurking in that room, and it's most certainly the Duke.
Whatever's in there...
The innkeeper and his wife droned on, asserting the spiritual terrors of the castle. I was new to these parts, having just arrived from America the week before, and I wanted to explore this strange land. After hearing rumors in neighboring towns of this haunted Red Room, I was determined to see it with my own eyes. I would not be deterred from my course.
I can assure you,
I said to the innkeeper.
28 years I have lived, and never a ghost have I seen yet.
Aye, and 28 years you've lived and never seen the likes of this house. There are many things to see when one's still but 28. Many things to see and sorrow for.
And have you seen the ghost?
No, I'm a good Christian woman.
It will take a very tangible ghost to frighten me.
But I'm telling thee, you're not seeing the likes
The
of this
inn's front
ghost
door
before.
suddenly swung open. An old man entered. He supported himself by the help of a crutch. His eyes were covered by a shade, and his lower lip, half averted, hung pale and pink from his decaying yellow teeth. The whiskey on the man's breath filled the room. He stumbled to an armchair on the opposite side of the table and sat down clumsily. The innkeeper and his wife stopped speaking. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. I cleared my throat.
It will take a very tangible ghost to frighten me, and if I see anything tonight, I shall be so much the wiser.
It's your own choosing.
It's my own choosing, yes.
The innkeeper and his wife began murmuring to one another. I glanced over, remembering the man with the crutch also in the room. He threw his head back for a moment and sidewise. He met my gaze. I caught a glimpse of his eyes, small and bright and inflamed. Then he began to sputter unintelligibly. The innkeeper turned abruptly.
Why don't you drink?
The man with a crutch took his glass with a shaking hand. A monstrous shadow of him crouched upon the wall and mocked his action as he poured and drank. He shot another glance of his eyes at me from out of the darkness. Eager to escape his stare, I asserted my desire again.
If you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will make myself comfortable there.
No one answered me.
If you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will relieve you from the task of entertaining me.
If you go to the Red Room tonight...
This night of all nights...
You go alone.
Very well, and which way do I go?
Go along the passage for a bit, until you come to the spiral staircase. On the second landing is a door covered with a green baize. Go through that, and down the long corridor to the end. The Red Room is on your left, up the steps.
Then I'll be off. Good evening.
And you are really going?
This night of all nights.
It is what I came for.
Oh, it's your own choosing.
Good night.
As I moved toward the door, the old man with the crutch rose and staggered toward the innkeeper and his wife. I turned and looked at them, their faces sallow in the firelight. I left the door wide open and grabbed the candle on the slab outside. I walked down the passage. The long, drafty passage was chilly and dusty. My candle flared and made the shadows cower and quiver. The echoes rang up and down the spiral staircase. A shadow came sweeping up after me. Another fled before me into the darkness overhead. I fancied I'd heard creeping behind me.
Who's there?
Absolute silence. I pushed open the door and stood in the silent corridor. The moonlight came in by the great window on the grand staircase, casting everything in vivid black shadow. A waiting stillness was over everything. I was about to advance when a shadow fell with marvelous distinctness upon the white paneling and gave me the impression of someone crouching to waylay me. With my hand in the pocket that held the revolver, I advanced.
Aha!
A bronze statue of Ganymede and the eagle greeted me, glistening in the moonlight. I moved my candle from side to side in order to see clearly the nature of the recess in which I stood.
Oh, how silly I am.
The door of the red room beckoned. I glanced over my shoulder at the statue in the moonlight. I entered the red room. I closed the door behind me at once, turned the key I found in the lock within, and stood with the candle held aloft, surveying the scene of my vigil. I looked around that huge, shadowy room. Black window bays, dusty brown-red hangings, and dark, gigantic furniture. I could well understand the ghost stories that had sprouted in its black corner, its germinating darkness. My candle was a little tongue of light in the vastness of the chamber. Its rays failed to pierce to the opposite end of the room and left an ocean of dull red mystery. The stillness of desolation brooded over it all. I resolved to make a systematic examination of the place and leave nothing to the imagination. I fastened the door. I began to walk around the room, peering round each article of furniture. Preserving my scientific attitude of mind, I walked round and began tapping the oak paneling for any secret opening. But I desisted before reaching the alcove. I saw my face in a mirror, pale.
Don't you look a fool?
I gathered myself, determined to dispel the fanciful suggestions before they obtained a hold upon me. There were 2 big mirrors in the room, each with a pair of sconces bearing candles. And on the mantel shelf, too, were candles in china candlesticks. All these I lit, one after the other. The fire was laid, and I lit it. I regarded the room again, its perfect stillness stimulating imagination. The echoing and crackling of the fire was no sort of comfort to me. The shadow in the alcove at the end of the room began to display the undefinable quality of a presence, a lurking, living thing. I walked with a candle into it and satisfied myself that there was nothing tangible there. I stood that candle upon the floor of the alcove and left it in that position. Again, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I laughed to myself and murmured,
See there, what a superstitious ass you are.
I began reciting rhymes to pass the time.
It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea.
I found the echoes reverberating in the room unpleasant, and I ceased after a while. Even with 7 candles, the room was dim. The light in the alcove flared and the fire flickered. Shadows shifted and stirred in a noiseless, flighty dance. I recalled the wax candles I had seen in the corridor. I walked out into the moonlight and returned with as many as 10. I put them in the various knickknacks of China, and lit and placed them where the shadows had lain deepest, some on the floor, some in the window recesses, arranging and rearranging them until at last my 17 candles were so placed that not an inch of the room was without direct light.
When the ghost comes, I should warn him not to trip on those candles.
The room was now quite brightly illuminated. The brooding expectation of the vigil weighed heavily upon me. I stood watching the minute hand of my watch creep towards midnight. I did not see the candle in the alcove go out. I simply turned and saw that the darkness was there.
A stranger.
A shadow.
Oh, by Jove, that draft's a strong one.
Taking the matchbox from the table, I walked across the room to relight the corner again. My first match would not strike. As I succeeded with the second, something seemed to blink on the wall before me. I turned my head involuntarily and saw that the 2 candles on the little table by the fireplace were extinguished. I rose at once to my feet.
Odd. Did I do that myself in a flash of absent-mindedness?
I walked back, relit one, and as I did so, I saw the candle in the right sconce of one of the mirrors wink and go right out. Almost immediately, its companion followed it. The flames vanished as if the wick had been suddenly nipped between a finger and a thumb, leaving the wick neither glowing nor smoking, but black. While I stood gaping, the candle at the foot of the bed went out. The shadows seemed to take another step towards me.
This won't do.
The pair of candles on the mantelshelf dimmed and sputtered out.
What's up? Steady on, those candles are wanted.
An invisible hand seemed to sweep out the 2 candles on the table.
Ah!
I dashed at the alcove, then into the corner, and then into the window, relighting 3 as 2 more vanished by the fireplace. This steady process of extinction went on. The shadows I feared and fought against returned and crept in upon me. The darkness was coming. I leapt, panting, from candle to candle in a vain struggle against that remorseless advance. I stumbled and fell. My candle rolled away from me. I snatched another as I rose. Abruptly, this was blown out, and immediately the 2 remaining candles followed. But there was light still in the room. A red light that streamed across the ceiling and staved off the shadows from me.
The fire, of course.
I turned to where the flames were still dancing between the glowing coals. I made 2 steps towards the grate, and the flames dwindled and vanished. The glow vanished. The reflections rushed together and disappeared. And as I thrust the candle between the grate, darkness closed upon me like the shutting of an eye, wrapped about me in a stifling embrace.
The candle
Fell from my hands. I flung out my arms in a vain effort to thrust that ponderous blackness away from me. I staggered to my feet. I thought suddenly of the moonlit corridor. With my head bowed and my arms over my face, made a stumbling run for the door. I forgot the exact position of the door and struck myself heavily against the corner of the bed. I staggered back, turned, and was either struck or struck myself against some other bulky furnishing.
Oh!
A heavy blow at last upon my forehead. A horrible sensation of falling that lasted an age. A last frantic effort to keep my footing. And then I remember no more. I opened my eyes. In the daylight, my head was roughly bandaged. I looked about me and found myself in the great hall of the castle. How I got there, I could not recollect. I rolled my eyes into the corner and saw the old man with a crutch from the night before. Had he been there all night? In the other corner of the room, the innkeeper and his wife stared. The innkeeper, having seen me stir, advanced.
What happened? Where am I? The candles went out one after the other, and I fled.
We found you at dawn, and there were blood on your forehead and lips.
The innkeeper's wife poured out some drops of medicine from a little blue vial into a glass.
You believe now that the room is haunted?
Yes, the room is haunted.
And you've seen it. And we who have lived here all our lives never set eyes upon it, because we have never dared. Tell us, is it truly the old Earl who...
No, it's his poor Countess who is frighted.
Aye, but it must be the Earl.
No, it is not. There is neither ghost of Earl nor ghost of Countess in that room. There is no ghost there at all, but worse. Far worse. Something impalpable. The worst of all the things that haunt poor mortal men. It followed me through the corridor. It fought against me in the room.
Then the man with the crutch lifted his face sideways to see me, his red eyes locking with mine. At once, I understood.
A power of darkness. It lurks there always. You can feel it even in the daytime, even on a bright summer's day. Fear. Fear that will not have light nor sound, that will not bear with reason, that deafens and darkens and overwhelms. In the dusk it creeps in the corridor and follows you so that you dare not turn. Fear itself is in that room. Fear. And there it will be so long as this house of sin endures.